and welcome to episode 7 of Point Me to Jesus. I am your host, Tara McClary Reeves, and I know many of you have probably heard the hymn, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Well, guess what? Our guest today really does too. Amy Parker is a prolific author of children's books. She has written over 60. Yes, 60. She is a wife. She is a mom to 2 boys. She is a podcast host, the Bible for Kids podcast. She is also, most recently, a law student. Amy, we are delighted to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you so much, Tara, for having me. And it's so good to connect with you and just have this conversation.
It really is. I know we have prayed for each other over the years, and you probably are a little bit better at technology than am I, but I know you and I have both expressed a little bit of concern in the past over how technocentric our children and families are becoming. And, you know, as an author and writer, I know that's a little distressing because we don't want kids plugged into the computers. We want them plugged into God's word and great Christian literature that you write. And so it is a struggle to try to connect in both worlds, but I think you are an incredible encouragement to me in how you balance that. You know, your concern, Amy, and your heart, and I hope that our viewers will be able to see this, and I'm sure they will immediately through you. And if they've read any of your material, they know you are not out to get followers for yourself, but out to promote followers of Jesus Christ. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I'm glad that comes through. But I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't have this career. The first book wouldn't have been written if not for God and his inspiration. And you know, you may pick them up, and the Night series, you know, it's pretty light. As you know, there's no deep theology involved, but just that connection to God, that reassurance that he's watching over us, that we can have peace as we sleep because he watches us as we slumber. Just that implanting that in their hearts early on, I feel is just foundational to a life of faith.
Yes. And tell us a little bit about your first book and maybe a little history in your start as a Christian writer.
So I I learn everything in hindsight, pretty much. And God has, like I said, just led me through every door. So I started as an intern at Tommy Nelson. I was going to school to be an English teacher. I was majoring in English, and I did an internship at Tommy Nelson, which was the pretty new kids division of Thomas Nelson. And I just fell in love with the publishing industry, so much so that I went back to my advisors at school and said, okay, how do I change around my career or my major so that I can do this as a career? And so I changed to a writing minor, a non-education English minor, made some adjustments there. But anyway, when I got out of school, they didn't have an editor position for me immediately, but very soon after, months, within a year, I was working at Tommy Nelson as an editor. And I'm like, I have my dream job. I'm working as an editor. And then about 9 months in, they came in and said, Amy, we're here today because today is your last day at Thomas Nelson. And I boo-hooed. And I don't know if you're familiar with Max Lucado's Hermie and Friends, but they had a big 6-foot Hermie in the conference room. They handed it to me and said, just hold him, and we're going to go to lunch after this is all over. We're going to talk to you about freelancing. And I'm like, I don't even know what freelancing is. It was the worst day ever. Oh. And then I thought it was the worst day ever, but God. So I started as a freelancer. Freelancing allowed me to do more writing opportunities. I found that writing was where I was really called to be. I was allowed to co-write some things and actually have author credit for those. But then the first book that I wrote by myself, I say my book, my first book, I was getting my little 3-year-old redhead to sleep. I was actually not getting my little 3-year-old redhead to sleep. I had read, yes, I had read all the books and sung all the songs. And then I just looked out the window and I said, shh, the trees are sleeping. And he kind of got quiet and looked around at, what do you mean the trees are sleeping? And he realized that his rowdiness was causing other people not to get their sleep. So I just continued down that path. The birds are sleeping. And eventually he fell asleep. I fell asleep. And I woke up in the middle of the night with this verse just ringing in my head. And so I jumped up and I typed it out really quickly. The next morning I got up and actually turned it into a readable manuscript and didn't think anything else about it. Well, maybe a week later, probably not even a week later, the publisher came to me and said, so we're looking for a bedtime book for this certain distributor. And I said, of course you are, and I said, I just wrote one last week. And she looked at me kind of funny because, I'm a freelance editor there and not a writer. And she said, okay, well, send it to me. And I sent it to her, and that became a night prayer, which is the first of many night books. And that was over a decade ago.
Oh, and it's so amazing as a fan of yours, and for you to have been such a part. I mean, literally a decade-long friendship, because as you know, Leah and I have 3 children, and we have read your books to our children at night. So it's just so incredibly special just to hear just your obedience and your faithfulness, even through that fiery furnace of affliction when you the Lord, had that detour in your life, but your dependence and your determination just to use every gift that you knew that he had blessed you with for his glory is just so exciting to see. So how many official books do you have, Amy? I know it's over 60, but have you ever bothered to count?
So my agent just nagged me about that and was like, okay, Amy, what's the running count? What's the updated count? And so it's now more than 70. I think it's 7. Yes, it's 72 of the ones that are currently contracted. Some of them, they're all written, and some of them may not be actually published yet, but they're all contracted. I have others that I've written that are not contracted, but contracted books that will be published is, I think, 72.
Well, I thought for just a few, and I have many more on my library, but again, I'm very spontaneous, and I just grabbed these off of Harrison's little library shelf this morning. So just the first thing that pops into your head when I show you one of these, okay?
Okay. Oh, that was such a gift. It was just such a gift. Jack Countryman is amazing. He has a super successful God's Promises line, and that was one that they allowed me to work on. And that one was, it just allowed me to practice my writing skills and grew my confidence as a writer. And then just seeing my name on there with Jack Countryman, he's legendary in the publishing world. He is, I don't think he would mind me saying, an octogenarian, and still goes into Thomas Nelson, still shows up and just leaves it all on the table for the Lord. So he's an amazing human.
This truly is a gift for not just little girls, but we also have the companion, God's Promises for boys, and it's equally as great. So I appreciate that. How about one of Harrison's favorites?
Oh, yes. And that one they've now done, an Easter prayer. They've done that one as a touch and feel. So that one was one that I did pretty early on too. It was a series of 4 books. There's an I love you prayer, an Easter prayer, a pumpkin prayer, and then there was one, a patriotic prayer, which you will appreciate, that was never actually published, but a little insider information there. There's
work on that one. Yeah.
Yes. So, but those were just so fun. And let's see, the chick's name is Nigel, and the bunny, I can't remember the bunny's name, but we just poured so much into just developing those characters, even though it's just a simple little board book, but just sharing that message of Easter and new life, resurrection. It was, something so simple can be really powerful.
And lastly,
oh, so that one is my favorite. That's my little redhead on the cover, my Ethan. And so this one, commercially did not do well. It did not sell well. Another little insider information. I have about 300 copies of this in my office right now because I bought the rights back to this one. But this one just, I was working at the time with Frederick, a gentleman that I met in Rwanda who has a fascinating story. I wrote his nonfiction book for adults. And I asked him one time, so what's on your Christmas list? Just making conversation. What's on your Christmas list? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, what are you asking for Christmas? It's just such a standard thing, like drinking coffee in the morning. It never occurred to me that a person would not know what a Christmas list was. And he said, oh, well, we don't really get things for Christmas. We go out and buy rice and beans for the people on the streets. And I thought, we think of Rwanda as this developing country, but there, that was just such a insight for me, just such a nugget of wisdom, such a profound wisdom that he shared with me that I'd never even thought about how privileged we are, how completely spoiled we are as a country. And so that one for me, so my Christmas list turns it on its end, and instead the little boy writes a Christmas list for children around the world and about, how we can help them.
And I love this so much because we are huge supporters of Operation Christmas Child.
Yes.
Every year with Samaritan's Purse. And I just, the personal connection of just teaching our children to give. The message in here is just so incredible. And
so those end sheets are actually photographs from, as we were developing the book, I said, send me in your photographs of your Christmas list, of how you're helping other kids around the world. And so many of them sent in Operation Christmas Child. So it just shows how powerful that organization is and how much they do to help kids think beyond themselves.
Yes. And I know that you can't pick a favorite. And I think writing a book is almost not the equivalent to, but close to birthing a baby. So you've had 2 deliveries during COVID, if I understand correctly. I want you to talk a little bit about those 2, and then you're in labor for the other 2 is that correct?
Yes. So depending on when COVID started, yes. So the Big Book of Bible Questions came out in March, and that one was such a learning experience for me. I got to work with the ingenious Doug Powell, who is a theology expert. And then I just basically took his expertise and turned it into language for kids. We came up with these questions, these foundational questions that kids might have about the Bible, that adults have about the Bible. And we sought theologically sound answers for each of those questions, but then wanted to tell it in a way that was engaging, that kids would actually care about and understand.
Yeah.
And so his insight was so instrumental to that. There's an audio book for that too that he and I actually read. So that was such a learning experience for me. And then on the lighter end of things, in July, Night Night Pumpkin.
Yep.
Released, and July is a weird time to release a pumpkin book, but because of the way the sales cycles work, they need some lead time in order to get them into the stores. So Night Night Pumpkin is one that I'm really talking about now that fall is upon us, and there's some cooling in the air, maybe a little bit. I'm in Tennessee, so it's still quite warm here, but so Night Night Pumpkin released in July, and that's available now, and it's super cute, has glitter on the cover and foil, and it's just super cute and just celebrates all things fall. How to get a mommy to sleep and how to get a daddy to sleep. I'm super excited.
Me too.
Yes, thank you. I've been a little anxious may not be the right word, but just sort of holding my breath for these because they're 2 picture books releasing at the same time. And picture books are generally kind of a harder sell than board books. Board books fly off the shelves, but there's 2 picture books releasing at the same time, no pressure. And it's just this, I've been saying night night to kids for over a decade now, like I said. And so this one sort of turns it on its end. And even in the even on the back cover copy, it reads like a how-to book from a child. By the time this book is finished, you'll have your mom sleeping in no time. And so it's just sort of this tongue-in-cheek, this bit of humor about all of the things that a child does, through the course of a day that
Yeah.
that wear us out as parents. But it presents it in a fun and loving and grace-filled way, so that at the end of the day, when parents are exhausted, they can just sit down with their child and just laugh through the scenarios in this book.
And again, just you see God's perfect timing, because truly this has been an exhausting season for all of us
It
through
has,
the
and
crisis, and how the Lord just timed this again in his providential perfection and perfect timing, just how these two are coinciding at such, it'll be lighthearted, but at the same time, there is a lot of serious undertone underneath.
yes, and when I wrote these books over a year ago, none of this was going on. It was just this lighthearted, and little did I know how much we would need the grace and the humor that these books have. So, he knew, and his perfect plans are always good. So they're coming at just a perfect time.
Also, Amy, can you give everyone your website, how they can contact you? Because you are so personable and so real, and that's what I love about you. But would you mind just giving our viewers that information?
Yes, real. I mean, this office, I could have gone to a nicer background probably, but this office, this is my life. This is my husband. That's his desk behind me, and then my son, who he's distance learning. So we've moved him to the spot behind me too. So yes, this is real life, and so my website sort of looks like real life too. It is amyparkerbooks.com, and of course you can connect with me on Facebook at Amy Parker Author and on Instagram at Amy Parker Books.
Yeah, and Amy, I also wanted to ask you too, who would you say is your hero of the faith from the Bible? If you could just pick one.
I don't, I have a friend writing a book about women of the Bible, and she asked me this question, and I couldn't give her one. I gave her a list of three and then an honorable mention. So, but Mary, I know that's probably sort of a cliche, but Mary, just her faith. She was she was probably a teenager, and an angel came to her. And I know we know this story, and I know we're like, yes, of course, this is what happened. But if you have teenagers at home, or think back to when you were a teenager, and an angel comes to your room and says, hey, God is going to give you a baby. Um, and she still said, let it be to me as you say. How that measure of faith is just astounding. It's just astounding to me. So I know she's highly revered, and for good reason. So Mary, and then of course just I, Jesus is probably the giveaway answer, but he's our standard.
Yeah.
He has, there's nothing that we'll experience that he doesn't understand. And so that as our standard and as our goal would probably be the ultimate hero of the faith. But there are just so many that.
Well, did you, when you were writing the book of questions and answers, was there one in particular that was a new revelation to you, perhaps?
Um, I don't know that any were new. Well, probably any and all. I mean, everything. One was just Doug's approach. Everything that the way he approached the Bible was so different from the way I approached the Bible in a purely, pretty much relational way. I want to know more about God and his rules. I know we don't like to think of the Bible as a book of rules, but I want to know what his instructions are for my life. And I know that my life goes better when I follow those instructions. And sometimes I need his hope, and I want to rely. I know He's faithful. Humans will fail us, but God will not. So I look to the Bible for that reason. But just seeing the science, I guess, in a way, I don't know how else to say that, but just the factual side of the Bible, and how truly it's not just relational, it's not just coincidental, it is real, and alive and active, of course, but it's real, it's built in truth, it's built in real, solid, tangible truth. So working with Doug took my relational view of the Bible to a whole different level of this tangible truth that we can actually firmly stand on.
Yeah. Do you think studying God's law is helping you tremendously as you study man's law?
I've been surprised actually at how many parallels there are between man's law in my law books that are not religiously related at all. How many times they mention the law, canonical law, and even the first day orientation of law school. The dean told a story about how there was basically a serial killer who another attorney had been chosen to represent, and he gave it his best and represented him and fought his hardest for him. But in the end, the facts just proved that he was guilty, and he was sentenced to um, execution. I don't want this to get too heavy, but anyway, as he's standing there waiting, to see the end of, he's standing there at the end of his life, and he calls his attorney in, and his attorney says, "I'm so sorry." And the client just said, "Stop right there. You have treated me like a human being. You have done everything for me that you could do, and I couldn't ask for more." He said,
Wow.
"But I do have one more question for you." He said, "Do you think God can forgive a person like me?"
Mm.
And on the first day of law school, to have something like that presented, it's just, um, it just confirmed for me. And there's been so many confirmations, but that
Yeah.
yes, that man's law is in so many ways based on God's law, and at the end, there's grace.
Yeah. Do you think writing Frederick's autobiography or biography, was that an impetus for you to pursue a law degree?
It probably planted some seeds, but I am not a planner, as my husband will tell you. And so it probably did plant some seeds. Their system of justice after the genocide was really remarkable, and something that the United States could learn so much from, the whole world could learn so much from, the power of forgiveness um, that just permeated that entire process
Yeah.
after the genocide. So there were definitely lessons in that story that I certainly took away, and um, could certainly apply as I study law.
What did you think you enjoyed most, writing in that genre or your children's lit genre?
Oh, um, they're so completely different. The experience of just getting to interact with Frederick, and going to Rwanda and seeing the people there, and just, I don't think you can compare with that experience. I mean, Night Night Pumpkin, yes,
Yeah.
is beautiful and celebrates God's creation and the glory of fall. But that personal interaction of learning and telling someone else's story, and just giving a voice to someone who otherwise wouldn't have a publishing voice in the United States, just being able to share that story. I think that's more profound. I don't think I'm as good as at telling nonfiction stories. I think I'm better at the children's lit part of things, but the experience of that was just
I'm glad the Lord's given you that humility, but you really are great at both, Amy.
Well,
You're
I appreciate your saying so, but
incredibly great at both. And we have the Rwanda Connection was so interesting to me. My brother-in-law is an ear surgeon in North Carolina, and during the '96 Olympics, actually, he was the doctor that was called upon to operate on the Rwandan Olympian who was with the Tutsi tribe. And when
yes.
he came over here, the medical doctors here realized that he was deaf because of hot diesel fuel that had been poured down his eardrums because of the conflict over there between the Hutu and is it Hutu and Tutsi?
Hutus and Tutsis,
Yeah.
yes.
And so when I read Frederick's account and just knew that we shared that bond, and the Lord allowed my brother-in-law to do a surgical procedure that the Lord just completely, of course, he's the master physician, and healed that boy's impaired hearing. And my sister is precious, and somewhere in Rwanda is a little Krista running around, because at the time of the surgery, this little runner's wife was pregnant, and after the success of the surgery, they named their child after my sister. So
Oh, that's I love that. There are so many fascinating stories there. Even while I was there and just in talking to Frederick, he would say, "Oh, and then here's my friend so and so who did this, or here's so and so. She actually married the man who, you know, um, performed these atrocities on her family." And it's just like there's just so many incredible, unbelievable, profound stories there, just from that period of time and beyond.
and again, you
Um,
see, your teaching, and sometimes as simplistic as you think it is, but you look at the Lord, and he said, suffer the little children to come unto me, and how you are distilling those truths that are just so full of love and grace and mercy and forgiveness. And no matter what the atrocity or whatever the struggle is, that truth applies no matter what the situation, and the difference that you're making, just not here nationally, but internationally. Have you had many of your books actually translated?
yes, I haven't counted recently, but at last count, they were in 7 different languages. But I'm also working with um, a company called Back to Jerusalem, a ministry, and they do fascinating work, and you should totally go check them out. But some of those books have been translated, and other countries have picked those up. So it probably 10 or more languages, including those books. So South Africa has their own, it's called Afrikaans, which
Yeah.
is based on a Dutch language. But so I have some books in those languages. So it's just so interesting and so completely beyond me how, someone beyond my mom is buying these books and reading them. So,
I love how you reference your mom so often on Facebook. Y'all are close like my mom and me. So I think that's what I was first bonded to you. I was like, she's a family girl too.
yes, my mom is probably my biggest cheerleader. And anyway, so
Did she
yeah.
read to you a lot growing up?
What did you say?
Did she read to you a lot growing up?
Yes, yes, she would read and give me books, and she encouraged more than anything. I mean, I do remember her reading to us a lot growing up, but once I could read on my own, I didn't, I can do it by myself. So it was probably those younger years, but she always encouraged, she thought I was the smartest kid on the planet. All of us were the smartest, the best. We could do whatever we wanted to do. She was always just so encouraging. And even now, even when I told her that I was going to law school, she's out buying clothes. She's like, you need back to school clothes.
Oh,
And you need, our Ann Taylor is having a sale, and, you need some suits to wear when you become just that kind of just feeding my dreams, regardless of what they are. She's done it. My brothers and I do very different things. My one owns a car shop and the other does computer repair, and she just feeds into our dreams. And I just think, as a mom, that's inspirational to me. That's what we're here for. All of our kids are so different, and we just can encourage them in their own unique ways, and in the way that God made them to
You're
be.
such a reflection of doing that in your writing, just your gift of exhortation. And you can tell, I would have loved, though, to have been a fly on the wall that day at Tommy Nelson when they were making the transition. I would have loved to have heard what your mom said. I can only imagine.
I don't even remember. I do know, my husband too, so supportive. We were fairly, still fairly young at this time. I was pretty new out of college.
Yeah.
And my husband works outside. He's a licensed land surveyor, but at this time he was not. He was out on a job. He's walking on a railroad track,
Yeah.
and the sole of his boot had just fallen off. It's summertime in Tennessee. It is hotter than blazes, and the sole of his boot fell off. And then I called and told him I'd lost my job. And I didn't know this until years later that was his situation. I just know on the other end of the line, he said, "It's okay, Amy. We'll figure it out. We'll do what we need to do to get through this." And he was so calm and so reassuring. And there he is standing on a railroad track without a boot, basically. So yeah, it's certainly a team of people who have just supported me and encouraged me, and that I stand on and draw strength from in order to do what I do.
And that's your reputation in the writing community too, is, you are non-territorial and you invest in the lives of others so beautifully. And, you recognize your gift, and you know that who the reservoir is, and you're just the channel flowing out from him, and how unselfish you are, just like today with your time for us, and just always your servant's heart is so beautiful. In closing, Amy, I do want you to tell us your favorite Bible verse, which I do think is on your website, which I love how you describe kind of your mission and your platform to launch these wonderful resources for us. And also, if you could share with our viewers a little bit about your podcast, which I weekly enjoy and learn and grow through so well. And I
Thank you.
would encourage our viewers and listeners to join that and subscribe.
So my favorite Bible verse, I read the Bible every day, and different verses speak to me differently every day, but I always go back to that John 3:16, and I memorize the KJV version for God. Yeah. But I think that just encapsulates, if you don't know anything else about God or Jesus or the Bible, it just encapsulates it all. He loved us so much that he sent his son to die for us. And so he so loved the world. And I feel like that's what we're called to do, not to love the things of this world, but to love the people of this world, and to just point them to him. And no matter what I do, and that I wrote on my website, I wrote 10 years ago, probably, that says, no matter what I do, I want this to be my purpose. And even now, as I'm pursuing law school, that's going to be my purpose, is to love the world the way, or the best I can, the way that God loved the world. And then part 2, the podcast, the Bible for Kids. My agent said, "Do you want to do a podcast?" I said, "Absolutely not. Never. I am never doing a podcast." And we're on our probably year anniversary now of doing this podcast, but my agent just worked it out to where it was easy. It was a no-brainer for me to say yes. And it's called The Bible for Kids, The Bible for Kids. You can go to thebibleforkids.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram as The Bible for Kids.
It's fantastic. And I do encourage you viewers to go there and to make sure that you add Amy Parker's books to your library. You will be encouraged. I don't care how old you are, because I do believe, Amy, you write for children and children young at heart. There is no age limit to the lessons that you teach, and how the Lord has blessed you along the way with some amazing illustrators that accompany your precious rhymes and words, and just what a beautiful, just a lullaby it is, really a literary lullaby every night for our 2 oldest are now in college. they still love when they come home and I'm reading your books to Harrison at night.
Aw.
Because again, now these are their childhood memories that they get to relive thanks to you. I will say, Harrison and I were reading the other night. She was like, you know, Mommy, Miss Amy's written ones about Christmas and Thanksgiving and Halloween and Easter. And I was born on Groundhog Day. Do you think she could write one about Groundhog Day?
Well, that
That's
would
my
be the
challenge to you in closing.
okay. Well, even if it's just for Harrison,
The Groundhog Day book. You know, I think all of us are kind of feeling during this corona pandemic that we are living in Groundhog Day. So prayerfully, the Lord will give you some inspiration there.
it's very applicable and relevant right now.
Very,
Yes.
very
You
much.
tell Harrison I will get to work on that.
All right. Well, we love you so much, and I truly
Thank
do.
you.
And I just want to thank you for just sharing your gifts and talents over the last over decade with our family, and just the difference that you've made, just as a wife and a mom. To you know, I'm watching you, and I love as I look at heroes of the faith from God's word, and then you're one of my heroes of the faith that's a contemporary now. You know, my prayer for all of us in ministry is that we will finish strong. And as I watch you and the hedges you've put in place in your marriage, and you are very intentional, like I try to be as well, with making sure that my main ministry to glorify Christ is always, of course, primary. But my public one is secondary to my private one, like yours at home. And I just love the things that you post and how you encourage your family, and how you are cemented at the heart to glorify Christ where it counts. And that's often behind closed doors. So thanks for your faithfulness and for your love. And I'm praying for you. And thanks for giving of your time on this little show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to talk to you.